This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Believe it or not, the Galaxy S6 is now a decade old. Yeah, feel old people. Samsung's best camera in 2015 looks distinctly different from the best Samsung Galaxy cameras today. Smartphone camera setups in general have changed a lot in the last 10 years, but what does all of this mean after you hit the virtual shutter button? This is a decade of smartphone photography. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and smartphone cameras have become potentially the headline feature in the product segment. Some of the most anticipated changes come from how far you can zoom in and still get a sharp image, or how much more dynamic range you can get and make sure everything is still exposed correctly. It's something many of us immediately look out for on a spec sheet and in reviews when a new product comes out. I've seen the analytics, I know what you're looking at. We are blessed with a whole suite of cameras on even mid-range phones in 2025, but back in 2015 you were lumped with a front-facing camera and a back-facing camera. Don't like it? Tough. This Samsung's Galaxy S6 is one of the very best cameras from 10 years ago. It's a single 16 megapixel sensor at 1/2.6 inches, or about the same size as the OnePlus 13's selfie camera size, with the relatively cropped in 28mm equivalent lens, and crucially, optical image stabilization. This was still quite new to smartphone cameras at the time and helped eliminate those annoying but frequent micro jitters that plagued early smartphone video and low light photos. Reviewers loved the Galaxy S6's camera. It was one of the standout components in articles and in videos, and rightly so. At this time, it was an absolute beast. It could also shoot Ultra HD 4K video, albeit what is now a measly 30 frames per second. By comparison, the Galaxy S25 Ultra's camera spec sheet almost looks like a Bible. It is ridiculous. But the takeaways are pretty simple. The main camera has over 10 times the resolution and double the sensor size. There's now an ultra wide and 2 telephotos, enabling a massive field of view or focal length range. So you can capture stuff that's close and stuff that's far away. Video has also seen a massive bump in resolution and frame rates. Those two spec sheets look like they're from, well, entirely different planets if we're honest, all still fitting in a phone, something that you can carry around in your pocket every day. That's kind of crazy. One of the most convenient and handy inventions of the last few years is certainly a VPN, and that's where this video's sponsor NordVPN comes in. Not only does this service help you browse anonymously, tunneling your network traffic through another region which helps secure your connection, but it's also just really handy for watching programs, movies and sports that you just wouldn't get in your home version of Netflix, for example. Or if, like me, you're a die-hard Premier League fanatic and you go on holiday, being able to log into your streaming services just as you normally would without a fuss is brilliant, and NordVPN allows you to do that. It works on Mac, Windows, iOS and our beloved Android. It's easy to install and get set up. If you go to nordvpn.com/ap, you'll get up to 77% off a 2-year plan and 3 months extra. So check that link out in the video description, and a big thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring today's content. I went out and I took photos and videos with both the Galaxy S6 and the S25 Ultra. What was immediately noticeable after the super fast battery drain on the S6, because, well, it heats up very quick and yeah, it's a decade old, it just doesn't last very long when you're taking loads of photos, was the shutter delay with the older model. Samsung's Galaxy S6 was quite a bit slower to grab focus and then also to take the shot compared to the Ultra. Not what I was really expecting because, well, it's been a long time since I used one of these things, but I guess we take for granted just how fast modern smartphone cameras really are. In the one-time shots, which is what I mostly shot with because, well, that's pretty much all the S6 can do, you can tell that the Galaxy S25 Ultra has the bigger sensor, because when you get close to subjects, there is certainly more bokeh, more blur behind the subject itself without any kind of portrait mode, and this creates that natural separation that you just won't find with a smaller sensor, or at least not at the same level. And the aspect ratio is also something that's different. You can select the S25 Ultra's aspect ratio from the S6's menu, but in doing this it reduces the resolution to 12 megapixels instead of 16, so I just left it at the default. There's certainly a substantial amount more dynamic range with the newer model, but also surprisingly more contrast. I think the balance is pretty hard to get a hold of because you don't want to blow out details to the point where they're completely gone, but you also want to have a nice natural contrast to the images. And both phones do have a version of the HDR pipeline. The Ultra's is, well, considerably more mature, and that shows itself on sunny days with harsh light, neither of which are particularly frequent in this part of the country at this time of year right now. The S6's lens comes out at around a 28mm full frame equivalent versus the much wider 24mm on the Ultra. And since there's no ultra wide on here, it's actually kind of hard to get everything in frame sometimes. And I noticed that in tight spaces in particular, well, it's just not at the same level, even if you do stick to the 1x lens. There also seems to be a bit of a blue cast to the older images and a cooler white balance maybe compared to the S25 Ultra, which looks warm when you put the images side by side, but in actuality just captured a far more lifelike version of the colours I was seeing with my eyes. Of course, there's no night mode on the S6, so photos taken in low light are quite obviously worse, much lower quality, because the sensor is far smaller, but there's also just less capable processing going on here as well. You can still take pictures in the dark, and honestly, they don't come out awful, but when you put them side by side with the S25 Ultras, they just do not stand a chance. And if you have a particularly shaky hand, well, you're going to end up with a lot of blur in your images. This is another key area where we have made substantial gains in the smartphone camera setups in the last couple of years. When you pinch in at around 2x on both, not only are the aforementioned differences certainly more noticeable, but you can really start to appreciate how much sharpening is going on in the older phone's photos, and that makes itself more apparent the further you crop in. Although I must say, at around 2x, the S6 surprisingly held up quite well. It certainly doesn't look amazing compared to the modern phone, but I was expecting far worse. I did give selfies a brief go too. This was one of the more obvious upgrades in the camera test. There's far more detail in my face and less denoising or smoothing going on with the S25 Ultra's photos. There's a bit of a blue cast again to the selfies with the older phone, and it doesn't take much to completely blow out either the highlights or the shadows with the older model either. I shot both phones in their standard video modes, but at Ultra HD 30fps, just to make it easier to edit and compare them on screen right now, but you can obviously see the most noticeable difference here is stabilization. Sure, the S6 has OIS, but the S25 Ultra almost looks like it's on a gimbal by comparison. That's something I've said about Samsung stabilization for a couple of years now. It is, for me, probably the best in a phone outside of the Asus ROG gimbal thing, but that's very niche. The S6's video is far jerkier, and though it is slower to react to light changes, it was quite dynamic still, at least more than I was expecting. And all of this is before we even get to the point about the S25 Ultra being able to capture a way wider field of view, along with a staggering amount more when you crop in above 5x. It really is a completely different era of smartphone photography. So whilst we may not have had a crazy amount of progress in the last 2 to 3 years, when you look back further over sort of a decade, it really is obvious to see just how far we've pushed our pocket computers to become photo and video beasts. Are you impressed by how far smartphone photography has come in the last 10 years? Or are you a bit underwhelmed and wishing for more these days? I think it's absolutely insane just that we carry multiple sensors, multiple cameras in our phones, and the phones are still able to be put in the pocket, just about. And also that a lot of the sensors in smartphones, even ones this old, are around the same size as what you'll find in like an old school bridge camera, which is kind of crazy. And yet these are still thin and portable. That might be me showing my age a bit there with the whole bridge camera thing, but I absolutely love smartphone cameras because it enables so much in such a small amount of space. Anyway, whilst you're down there in the comments reminiscing and letting me know your stories on smartphone cameras, which Samsung was your favourite camera by the way, be sure to hit like if you enjoyed today's content and subscribe to never miss another upload on this channel. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Cheers. Upload on this channel. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.